Okay, how many people were here last week? One? Yes, it's fine. Okay, how many people are familiar with Git? Like, okay. I'm gonna go over the things we did last week, just like 5 minutes, hopefully, as a refresher. Everybody will remember. So I think the first thing we did was check the config. So git config. And you should have, say, your username, your email address, and maybe your editor set, something like that, you know, with whatever your preference is. The username, use your email will just identify yourself to Git so that you, when you make commits and you make changes, who made them. It'll be helpful when you're collaborating with other people. I'm going to make a quick repository, just go over that again, but I won't really explain it much because we did it last week. So I'm going to make a directory. Initialize the Git repository with git init, which will set up all the stuff to track your files and whatnot. I'll edit a file. I don't know if I have that text. With nano. Say, add this file to the tracking for Git. And do commit. Say, add a reasonable message. And if we look at the status, that's the one other useful command that we have. Nothing important is going on because we made a commit. Nothing, no changes, etc. And I mean, that's fine for working by yourself. You can just commit stuff and do whatever. You can maybe check the log. And you see there's one commit made. That's it. Not really very interesting. But let's try to actually do something with like actual collaborative work. But before, let's talk about like what collaborating is really. I heard a few reasons why you might want to collaborate. Does anybody have any other reasons why? Raise your hand.
You don't have to meet up in person. You can work over anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good reason. Yeah, sure. But I guess more like reason to work in. I mean, that's a good reason to work in open source because you can work with a lot of people all over the world. You don't really have to, you know, fly to France to meet your collaborators and work on things. You can work on things from here, or and you never know who you might be working with. Really, it could be anywhere around the world. Any other reasons? Yeah.
When you change something and it breaks it, there's control over whether or not it actually breaks the whole set of code. And like there's controls in place for people to make contributions to their learning. So take caution and calling because they're waiting on it.
Sure. I guess you could say that it's like decentralized. So when you work on something, you don't necessarily break it for everybody. And that way you can, you know, focus on what you're trying to fix or trying to improve or whatever, and you don't have to worry about, you know, breaking the internet accidentally. I mean, another reason is just you want to practice stuff, you know, try and learn a new language or practice using Git or whatever. I mean, I find the best way to learn a new language or learn a new project is to just sort of dive in and try it out. Maybe try and fix a bug or something and be like, oh, well, this doesn't work, but maybe, you know, through looking to how to figure out how to fix it, you might actually figure out a way, you know, learn how to actually use the library or something like that. And then, well, you fix the bug too, so you hopefully contribute and improve things. So there's lots of ways, I mean, lots of reasons why you might want to contribute to open source. And the other reason is it's fun sometimes, you know, just fix a bug and be like, hey, look, I just fixed a bug for 5 million people or however many users there are on the project. Now, just to be clear, you don't actually have to fix code, right? I mean, you can fix documentation, you can fix tests, you can do design work on like the website or something. It doesn't necessarily, when you contribute to open source, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fix like actual Python code or R or whatever. I mean, you can do really anything. There's a quote by Matplotlib lead developer who says, if you can use Matplotlib, you're qualified to contribute to it. And what he was referring to was documentation. In other words, like if you know how to use it, then you're probably the best one to actually write new documentation, because all the rest of us who've been using it for like 10 years already understand it and don't know how to write documentation about it because we already understand it. We don't know what's missing and what new developers need to know. So if you've just learned how to use the library, maybe you want to write some documentation. You don't necessarily need to write code when you're contributing to open source. But speaking of, there's maybe, I don't know, 3 reasons why you might want to contribute. Well, let's see. I mean, so related to that, you might want to contribute if you're fixing a bug, or if you're making an enhancement of some sort. And one other thing, which I forgot what it is, but I'm sure it'll come to me later. When you're doing so, there's something. Let's say you're trying to report a bug. There's something that they call a short self-contained correct example. The website is just sscce.org if you want to go look at the description. But the point is that if you're reporting a bug, you don't want to give them your entire thesis and be like, if this doesn't work, because nobody's going to be able to figure out what the heck you're talking about. So what you would like to do is maybe cut it down to something short, self-contained. You don't need like your entire thesis data set to be able to do it. If it's a little small, I can make it bigger. It needs to actually work. I mean, you can't give them an example, say this is broken, but actually it doesn't even work at all. So it doesn't even show you that it's broke, that there's a bug. And I mean, obviously it needs to be an example of what the problem is, right? So if you're reporting bugs, you probably want to try and aim for one of these SSCCEs. So short, self-contained, correct, compilable example. And what do we want to look at for actually contributing? Well, I guess the first step is to find what you want to contribute to. I mean, you can contribute to anything really, but like how many people use Python here? Okay, like R or JavaScript or sure. Okay, so say you're working on Python, you might go to py.pi.org, so pypi.org, and then search for the thing you're working on, like say Matplotlib, and there will usually be a homepage link here. And this one does not go to the homepage, but there's a link to their GitHub here. So work on GitHub, and you can find their GitHub like that. If you're working on JavaScript, you might go to npmjs.com, sorry. Search for a package. I don't know what to search for. I don't use JavaScript, so something. I would search for LeftPad, but I don't think that's there anymore. Like, search for LeftPad and should find their repository on GitHub. And now you're on GitHub, and you can hopefully be able to figure out where to, report an issue or start making a pull request or some other thing like that. If anybody was wondering about R, you can go to cran. Cran.r project. And look at packages. But since nobody uses R here, okay, I'll leave that for now. So I'm not going to throw you into the deep end and say you should contribute to Matplotlib or anything. So we'll start with like a sandbox repository. we just work on like one of our own things and try and work it out. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go right back to Matplotlib for 1 second. We look for a couple of things you might want to look for. So when you're contributing to something, you might want to look for the license, just in case there's something weird. It's not necessarily easy to read, but I will post a link on the thing, but there's something called chooselicense.com made by GitHub. But it has like a nice simple layman terms explanation of what the license means. So if you want to know what like the MIT license is, you can click here and it'll be okay. It says you can use it for permission. You give permission for.
Now 6:31. Building closing at 7.
Okay. Commercial use, distribution, etc. Also, what the conditions are for using the license and what the limitations are, like that there's no warranties, no liability, that sort of thing. Commonly, open source projects will use either something like an MIT or BSD license or a GPL, LGPL. The explanation for that is all in here, so don't worry if they sound like random terms. The other thing you might see in a project is, well, it's not probably in GitHub. GitHub section is something like contributing.md or these templates. The contributing.md generally explains stuff. This one actually just points somewhere else, but that's fine. But before you contribute, you may want to read this and be like, okay, well, if I'm having a usage problem and it's not really a bug per se, maybe you should go to Stack Overflow or a mailing list or something like that instead of GitHub. Or if it actually really is a bug, then what information they want to know before you report the bug. So for example, in the issue template here, ask for some code, what you're looking for, what actually happens, and maybe some other version information that you might want to provide that they would ask. So look for some of those things before you report a bug or start a pull request. I mean, sometimes they have, before starting an enhancement, they may want to discuss it on a mailing list with the rest of the developers or something like that. So, look for this information. Usually a generally well-run project will have something like that. So this issue template and pull request template actually on GitHub will cause it to show up when you start writing a new issue. So if I hit new issue here, you see the thing that I had shown you before. It comes up here with a little description of what it is and what you should write here. So these are pre-set up things that will show up before you write an issue. We'll get to that and what that means in a second. There are other files you may want to look for, like documentation, that sort of thing. If you're on GitHub, you might see like a Travis file or an AppVer file. These are used for continuous integration, so they will automatically, that means that it will automatically test your code when you're making a pull request. I won't go into a lot of detail on that, but at least it will show you that, there'll be checks that see that you don't totally break anything before your things are merged. And, you might have like a couple of badges like here. This says Travis is working, AppVer is working. Other things, not really important. Pardon? No, Travis is not a person, no. Travis is a continuous integration. I mean, I can click this and you can see it has it will have, test status on the current or the latest commit. Plus you can go look at the history and look at how much things were failing or not failing. Preferably, when you make a pull request, it will not fail. Let's go back to our thing. So go to github.com/uftcoder/sandbox-2017. And I could report a new issue if I wanted to, like new issue. This is our sandbox, so there's no template, but I mean, starting an issue is pretty straightforward. I mean, I don't know if I need to explain that too much, but you know, when you're actually working on a project, you try and get as much information as they ask for as possible, right? Well, let's look at how we collaborate with this repository. So first off, what GitHub does is what they call like the fork and pull model. With older version control systems like CVS or Subversion, there would normally be a central server, and you'd have to either ask permission or somehow send patches or something like that. What GitHub did was they said, okay, well, you know, we'll have a central place where the canonical place of everything is, but everybody individually can make their own fork and work on that however they like. So first is you hit the fork button. I already have a fork just here, so I'm going to go straight to it. You may or may not get that pop-up depending on what your login is like, but yeah. And you should see that the URL now changed from github.com/uftcoders to github.com/my username /sandbox-2017. And it should have a little thing down here that says it was forked from the UFT Coders sandbox. So now we will download that to the computer. So I will copy this link here. There's a little clone or download button, green button on the right there with the link. And so I will copy that. Control-C or copy. I will go back to my desktop. So paste the URL. My password. Yours will not say QLogic. It'll say whatever your username is on GitHub. And I think the default actually is not to be SSH. It will probably be HTTPS something, unless you've set up an SSH key. You didn't have to do that beforehand, so just copy this one, whatever comes up. So now if we go into the sandbox 2017, I should be able to look at the log, and I should have a bunch of stuff happening. Ignoring the one that I already did last time, comes from the fork that we made, right? So right now what I had is there's the one repository that's owned by UFT Coders, then there's another copy on GitHub that's owned by you, and then there's like a clone that you made onto your laptop, right? And so when I want to collaborate, I want to be able to sync between all of them. So what I usually do is I add a remote for the original one. So if we look at git remote, so what that will do, will list the connections that Git knows about. So right now it says that there's origin, which points to my copy here, or my copy on GitHub, sorry. And what I want to do is add another one. So git remote, add upstream, and we will go back here, coders, and copy that URL that was there as well. So the reason why I'm adding another remote is because I want to be able to sync things between the copy that UFT Coders owns and the copy that I have. Unfortunately, GitHub doesn't really have a sync button. So you can't be like, okay, let's refork it again and make sure everything is all in sync. Yep.
When I git remote /v/read, I have not a git repository.
Okay, make sure you CD into sandbox-2017.
Oh yeah, I'm in desktop still. CD into the one.
Yeah, sandbox-2017. Yeah. So now if I check git remote-v, I should have two, or well, 4 lines, but there's 2 remotes. So there's one origin and one upstream. I mean, you can name it whatever you like. You could name it UFT Coders instead of upstream. I think the name comes from sort of like a river flowing, like, you know, the changes are there and then they come downstream to you, something like that. So what we'll do is make some changes. So how many people are familiar with branches? Sort of, okay. So theoretically, the best way to do it is to make a new branch first. The reason why is that if you're making multiple pull requests and they are independent, you want to be able to switch between them and not get your changes confused. So that's why you start a new branch and be like, you know, this is branch feature 1 or something like that, or bug fix 2, whatever. For now, I'm not going to do that just because it'll be more work. But keep that in mind that when you start doing more complicated work or more like pull requests at a time, you want to create a new branch when you do that. Now, this isn't that big of a deal when you create a branch. Like, you can create a branch afterwards or before you start your work. They're really just pointers that point to a place. There's not really any magic to it. But so let's see what's here. So we have some files. My thing is actually outdated, so my fork was made a while ago, so you probably have a couple more files than I do. So we can actually look at that. So I'm going to also do git fetch upstream. And what that will do is that will download all of the commits that came from the U of T coders repository. So what I did when I first cloned is I cloned from my fork. So I got all of those commits. And then I also pulled now from the U of T coders one. You probably won't see any changes because you just made your fork. So everything should be in sync, right? So when you copied the U of T coders to your username, there were no differences. So when you fetch, I mean, actually, we'll still stay this, but there won't be any actually new things happening because you actually technically have all the same commits. But if I look at my log now, I can see that there was master, which is where I am currently on my computer or on my laptop. There's origin master. If you missed the line, it's get log dash dash graph dash 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 all. There's origin master, which is the place that my fork is. And there's upstream master, which is the place where the U of T coders copy is. So for all of you, I'm going to guess that they're all in the same place, just because you just made your fork. So you should have master, origin master, and upstream master all in the same place. Mine is out of sync because I made this fork last year when we did the class some other time. So I don't know when it's from, but it's outdated. But we can use that to make a pull request. So let's do that now. So I'm going to quit this. Press Q to quit the log thing if it's not showing anything. So I am going to edit, I don't know, readme dot. Which has a readme. Actually, no, let's not edit that one. Let's edit bio.txt again. So you can all make a separate thing in there. So I'm just going to put the same thing as I did last time. So my name is Elliot. You should put your own name. I don't think any of you are named Elliot. So. Do you have like a colon at the bottom or? Yeah, or well, I put bio.txt now, but that's fine. Well, I mean, you edit it into the code. Well, just go edit it into VS Code.
Okay.
The same thing. It doesn't matter if you use Nano or whatever.
Okay.
Just an editor, right? So, I mean, just save it in the Sandbox 2017 folder, and it's the same thing. So I'm going to get bio to text. Now that it's saved. And if you look at the status, I should have a new file here. Hit that. Look at our log again. So now I'm here on my local computer. I'm one commit ahead of the fork and some other commits ahead of upstream, but you guys will be just one commit ahead. So what I'm going to do is to git push origin. Everybody did that? So git push origin master. After you've done the commit, you should be able to do git push origin master. Okay, and so if we go back to our fork, so I'm going to go back. The timing is right. Sometimes GitHub will put up a little prompt here to say, open a pull request.
Retention free. It's down 648.
But apparently it's not. But there's a new pull request button here, so I can use that. So click new pull request. Sometimes you need to change these, sometimes not. But in this case, it's correct. I want to use the base fork of UFT Coder Sandbox 2017. So I want to send it to main repository, onto the master branch, and using my fork and my master branch at the moment. So I currently have a bunch of random commits here. I don't know why, they're just old, but anyway. You probably will only have one commit that will be there. So I'm going to create a pull request. We don't have a template either, so there's no template. I'm going to say something like very non-creative today, so exactly what's going on. And create a pull request. Actually, before you press the button, you probably should have checked that it has what you want. So I don't know if I can go back and still look. Okay. So before you press the button, you probably want to go look here at what commits are added and what files are changed. I'm okay with what's changed, but maybe you'll notice that you accidentally added like a password somewhere or something like that. Or you started working on one thing and you changed to another thing and you didn't actually want to put that in that pull request. So then you see that it's not there. You go and fix it beforehand, but you probably want to check these just in case. And then you hit the create pull request button. I have already done that, so I'm just going to go forward. And then you have a pull request. So now comes the collaborative part, where other people who work on the project are going to come see your pull request and say, okay, make comments or whatnot. I see nobody has made a pull request yet.
Awesome.
Yep.
So in our pull request, it actually contains 6 comments, right?
Yeah.
Is there a way on GitHub to squash these comments into just one?
On GitHub itself, I don't think so. You can do it with Git though. So that's a bit more advanced. I don't know. Well, we don't really have a lot of extra time. I could talk about it for an hour, but
now, I know how to do it on Git, but before you push it to GitHub, right?
yeah.
Because what often happens with me is that I push a comment and I see that, oh, I forgot something else. Then I do something else when you push, and then the history just gets
right.
Weird with a bunch of little incremental comments when actually I just wanted to do it once.
Sure. So let's say I am here. I don't know. I'll add like last name initial or something. So now I'm fixing this, like I made a mistake or something like that. So I can add bio.text, but I'll put amend. So in this case, I'm fixing the last commit, so it's easy. I just amend it, and then that will correct the last commit that I made. But if we look at the log, you'll see that now, like on my computer here, I have one commit, and on GitHub, I have a different commit right there out of sync because I changed that commit, right? If you change any of the files, or you change the message, or you change the date, that will make a new commit. So now things are out of sync. If I try and push, it will not work. It will say something about being behind and stuff like that. No fast forwards allowed. Or I mean, it's not a fast forward merge. Essentially what that means is that normally Git would expect that you just add more commits on top of stuff, right? But right now we've got a split here. Like there was this commit, and then there's a new commit that's made based on the previous commit. And now there's two. There's one that's how it is locally, and one that's how it's on GitHub. So the normal advice that Git gives you is to git pull. The reason why it's being safe, it wants you to not lose anything. So if I did git pull, what would happen is it would pull down these changes from GitHub, and it would make a merge commit. That would be an extra thing. But then now you've got one commit that says what you wanted, and one commit that says what you made a mistake in, and another commit that merges them back together again. So the actual fix of that is that when you amend it, is you want to do git push origin master force, and then it will say, okay, I really wanted to throw away that commit that was on GitHub, and so now it will push it. And if you look at the log, now there is only the one commit that we had locally and the one commit that is now on GitHub, and there's no old commit with the mistake in it. And the same thing happens when you rebase. So like if you wanted to squash like 3 or 4 commits, it's basically the same thing. If you've already opened a pull request from that, and then you want to rebase and squash things together, you have to do a force push to get rid of the stuff that's there on GitHub. It's not technically gone, but it's not visible. And eventually it will go away, but for now it's invisible. Anyway, now we've got some pull requests. Well, one other pull request. And so when you're collaborating, there's going to be something like reviewing changes. So we can sort of go over what that means. You gotta click on the little plus sign here and be like, this is a comment. On GitHub, there's 2 different ways to do that. You can add single commit, which will just add the commit there, or you can start a review. So add single commit just makes the commit, or single comment will just make the comment there. Start a review will start like a multi-comment review. So I've started a review. I can add another comment here. Add another review comment, and then there's this button at the top that says review changes. And you can say, add a summary to that review. I am, again, being very creative and just saying exactly what I do. If you are not the person to open it, you can also add like an approve or request changes flag on that review. So I can hit like request changes, and when I submit the review, there will be a requested changes, and then it'll be listed here as requested changes. And depending on how the project is set up, they can be like, okay, we will never accept pull requests until all of the requested changes reviews are gone, or until there's at least one accepted change, or something like that. Again, check like the contributors.md or the pull request template, and they will hopefully explain what their rules and logic are for that. Yeah, 3 minutes. So then hopefully it will be merged. So if everything is good, there's also this approve changes here I can use. After somebody has fixed all your changes, you can hit that approve change button to dismiss my these changes review, and it'll be gone away. And I can hit merge pull requests if I wanted to. $10 doesn't really matter. And hopefully your request will be merged at the end. There are checks here. We don't have them implemented on the sandbox, but the checks would be stuff like running tests or checking documentation or something like that. If we want an example of that, that would be like matplotlib. Look, one quick example, and then finish with that. So matplotlib, we look at the pull request, pick a random pull request. And if we look at the end, there are a bunch of checks here. So they might have a documentation build. These two are documentation builds. Make sure your documentation looks good. There's code coverage, which makes sure that your tests actually check all your code. There's actually running the test. So just to be clear, I mean, making a contribution is not necessarily just writing a thing and being like, this is it, and I'm done. I mean, hopefully you get like the full ecosystem fixed. So like, you add a test, or writing documentation, there's not too much as long as the documentation works and is correct. Usually it's merged quickly. If you're writing a new feature, obviously you're gonna want to write tests and that sort of thing. But it's not like here's my code and then disappear. That's not really being very helpful to an open source project, because then you just kind of disappeared and nobody knows what to do with your stuff. So, I mean, there's obviously a range of things you might want to work on. You start like maybe just making some small documentation changes, but I mean, when you start moving on, or moving up and doing more things, there's more things to do, but just start small. Since we don't really have any more time, I guess I'm finished. But if there are any questions, feel free to ask. We might have to talk while leaving. But
Thank you.